Welcome back, everyone. As you can tell from the title and thumbnail, we're still going over Transformers G1, this time episode 5. Fun fact I learned since last time, the first 3 episodes that I covered in SMC number 1 are technically their own mini-series, but I use technically the same way I used it to describe G2 as a 5th season to the show, that being not really. Everyone including Hasbro considers it to be part of season 1 now, and I can't really think of a good reason to keep them separate. I only bring that up because you could argue that this is actually episode 2 of season 1, but for all intents and purposes we're just going to go by the rule that More Than Meets the Eye is part of season 1. With that little technicality out of the way, I wanted to address one more thing, and that's that I wanted to start mentioning who wrote each of these episodes. Partly to give credit, and partly because I think it'd be interesting to see if any patterns emerge. This episode was written by Douglas Booth, who has written for shows including Spider-Man, Smurfs, The Flintstones Comedy Show, and more. Apparently he's still writing today for a Spanish TV show called Yolanda, Daughter of the Black Corsair, among other work. Booth hasn't written any episodes he covered thus far, but he does return later this season. Now with all that covered, if you don't know anything about G1 Transformers or want a recap of the plot, I would recommend checking out my previous SMC videos. Anyway, let's get to the episode. Season 1, Episode 5. Roll for it. Due to Megatron being presumed dead, Starscream has been in charge of the Decepticons on Earth, and we see him, Soundwave, and Thundercracker heading to raid yet another power plant for more Energon cubes. Upon arriving at the plant, the workers make an emergency call for help, but luckily for them, the police are already on site.
Stop! You violated the law. Pay the court a fine or...
Unluckily for them, pistols don't do much against giant robots, and so they flee. The Decepticons begin to make Energon cubes, but are interrupted by the Autobots popping in to say hi. You see, in shows like Transformers Prime, the Autobots have this thing called a ground bridge, and that allows them to teleport themselves across the globe for rapid response. But the Autobots in this show don't need that, because they possess the ability to teleport while off-screen. This is never confirmed, but I don't know how else the Autobots were able to arrive before the Decepticons were even able to make a single Energon cube. Then again, maybe the Autobots have just caught on to how the show works by now and just sit outside power plants waiting for the Decepticons to show up. Either way, a fight breaks out, and while Cliffjumper and Brawn don't do too well, Optimus is able to carry the team on his back and force the Decepticon retreat. Must be a new record. Soundwave is chased down by Prowl and Bluestreak, but Starscream is able to airlift him out.
Transform, you fool! Now!
The Jets are hit during their retreat, but still manage to escape. Prowl and Bluestreak are sent to tail them while we cut to Cybertron. Megatron isn't too happy about being on Cybertron because, fun fact, he still hates Starscream. He and Shockwave give Starscream a FaceTime call, which for some reason they didn't do up until now.
Ah, Starscream, I see you've adopted my signature strategy. Megatron, you're not dead? Yeah. Oh, anyway, listen up. I need you to meet me at the lab to steal that antimatter formula. I don't think that's ever been mentioned before. Don't be silly. Remember the plan? Ah, yes, the plan.
I legitimately went back and rewatched the first part of this episode because I thought I missed something, but no, this is the first time the lab, the plan, and the antimatter formula have been mentioned in the entire show. Anyway, before they link up, Starscream and his raiding party need to stop and make some repairs. Megatron then space bridges back to Earth, because I guess he just didn't feel like doing that earlier. Next we get to see the lab Megatron was talking about, where Spike and Bumblebee accompany Chip Chase to pick up something from a doctor. Again, this is the first appearance of Chip, and there's no introduction, but apparently he's a really smart friend of Spike who's an associate with the lab. As the group enters the lab, the Decepticon Reflector photographs the key code for the door. Chip meets up with Dr. Alcazar, who gives him a disk that allows his home computer to remotely access and communicate with the lab's supercomputer. On their way back, Laserbeak ambushes them, presumably to get the disk, but they manage to escape. This makes Megatron decide to attack the lab immediately, without Starscream, knowing that the Autobots will soon be alerted. Speaking of Starscream, he and his crew are busy salvaging parts from an airfield for repairs. Prowl and Bluestreak catch up to them and start a fight they probably shouldn't have. Prowl is hit badly and his battle computer is damaged, and no, I don't know what that means, but I do know that Prowl hooks into the internet to allow Chip to take control of his systems. This turns the tides and the cons flee. And yes, I'm calling BS on Chip being able to control a hyper-advanced alien robot with an 80s home desktop and software. While that's all going on, Megatron and the other Decepticons infiltrate the lab using the door code, allowing themselves to get in quickly and quietly. Dr. Alcazar erases the formula, but Megatron sees through his bluff and knows that he sent the formula elsewhere. Oh, hey, the antimatter formula. Oh, hey, Soviet launch codes. The Decepticons trace the message back to Chip, and so Megatron has Starscream make a stop on his way back to pick him up. Oh, my Uber's outside. Chip has already memorized the formula, so he destroys his copy to prevent the Decepticons from getting it. To get around this, the cons just take Chip himself. Despite throwing Chip through a window, the Decepticons bring his wheelchair too, which they totally didn't have to. The Decepticons are a lot of things, but inconsiderate is not one of them.
Excellent ravage.
The Autobots arrive at the lab just as Starscream and his group return, meaning the Decepticons can now use Chip as a hostage, threatening to kill him if the Autobots attack. Chip is then brought inside for Soundwave to extract the formula from his mind, and with the formula, Megatron is able to create antimatter, which the Decepticons load into some Energon cubes they brought with. It's kind of vague what antimatter actually does in this show, but all you need to know is that it turns small booms into big booms.
Cut!
The The Autobots infiltrate the lab using a combination of Hound's holograms, Mirage's invisibility, and Bumblebee's small size, getting in undetected. Maybe next time the Decepticons will post more than one guard. The infiltration team causes a distraction inside that allows Chip to be rescued by Bumblebee and clear the compound. Now the Decepticons have lost their leverage, Optimus busts down the compound walls and deploys a strike team from his trailer. The bots breach the lab, confronting Megatron, who unfortunately possesses the holy hand grenade of Antioch.
"'Tis but a scratch."
After taking a tactical nuke to the face, all the Autobots survive and no Decepticons are injured. Despite the Autobots being severely wounded, the Decepticons don't even try to finish them. In a surprise turn of events though, the Autobots are the ones to retreat for the first time in the series.
Well, well, well. How the turntables...
The Autobots return to base for repairs while they contemplate how to stop Megatron and his new weapon. Luckily, Wheeljack thinks he has a plan. The bots have little time to rest though, as Megatron leads the Decepticons in an assault on the base. Megatron is loaded with the antimatter and transforms into gun mode, essentially becoming an antimatter cannon. Starscream opens fire on the Autobots, who are hopelessly outgunned. Optimus rams into Starscream, making him drop Megatron, but Skywarp recovers the gun. Spike, apparently with a death wish, charges him and jackhammers his leg. Skywarp picks him up and is about to fire at point-blank range, which realistically would kill both of them, so maybe Skywarp has a death wish too. Before he fires though, Chip plants a device on his leg. The device, made by Wheeljack, assumes control of Skywarp and makes him turn the antimatter gun against the Decepticons. Megatron transforms to stop this, but the antimatter inside him has reached ignition temperature, meaning he needs to jettison the cubes before they nuke his insides. And again, the explosion looks like the Tsar Bomba going off, yet everyone at point-blank range is still alive. For once, Megatron's use of his signature strategy is appropriate and the cons pull out. Yay, Chip, you saved the day! Really? Totally, we won all thanks to you. Way to go, Chip. You single-handedly beat the Decepticons. We sure are glad to have a friend like you, Chip.
Well, not to be rude, but I invented the device.
Hey, you shut your face!
The Transformers will return after these messages.
There's no one here. I must have static in my rectifiers.
Now that's the smartest thing you've said all day.
Really? Hey, what's going on?
We now return to the Transformers.
Thank you all again for watching, and as always, I appreciate all the support. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did and aren't subscribed, then consider subscribing. Thanks again, and see you next week.